You know what's fucking funny? It's funny that these twats bitching about how women do not behave in the way they expected them to do not even realize that they are part of the problem. Most of these fucks call themselves liberals or humanists or Christian or whatever. They just can't see the connection between them advocating the unleashing of nature from human control and then its chaotic behavior. These morons actually fell for the old Christian bullshit that man is inherently good and that nature, God if you like, is benevolent and gives a shit about their emotions and about families and about justice. They were expecting women to be logical and moral and fair once they gave them the right and supported the institutions which maintained their right to do as they pleased, where they pleased, with whomever they pleased. This is like breaking a dam and then expecting the river to still go through the turbines which produce the good electricity we all depend upon. This level of naivete borders on retardation. And retardation or stunting is what this system does best. Just look at the States. I mean, the romanticism of these turds is only slightly different than the Christians who still thinks that after death his life deserves to be kept alive in some paradise. Some of these morons who are proud of being modern associate their naive hopes with what is just, as if the universe owes them something for just being born. If you just listen to these turds online talking about how women are fucking them over, or you realize that these men children are suffering from unrequited love. They still hold on to the romantic ideal where women are nice and tender and good, where their soulmate awaits their discovery so that they can live happily ever after in some Beaver Cleaver universe. If you ask any of them, they'll tell you education is what keeps people from being just. A Christian will tell you this education is the Bible. The liberal humanist will be more vague about it. He will say the right education from the proper teachers under the correct circumstances is what is needed. Can you imagine the stupidity involved in defending equality and rights and then expecting people to behave in ways other than selfishness and with a sense of entitlement? It's like you train a lion, and because you're a dumb fag, you think that this training suffices to keep it from mauling you. And when it inevitably does maul you, you begin accusing it of being exactly what nature meant it to be. These idiots now think pouting and avenging themselves against females by dropping out is so effective that women will suddenly come around. Women don't give a shit if some omega male sits in his room watching porn and jerking off, never to have children. They seek superior genes to replicate. That's what they want. If anything, women already know that all it takes is a gesture, and then men children will come in their pants, falling over themselves to become their carpet, to become the carpet they walk on. But let's say they are successful and somehow women begin treating them with respect. Are they sure that this is because of some genuine enlightenment and that women are not using them again? Would these idiots be happy knowing that the women they support and who now pretends to respect them is not doing so just to have them help with the bills? Would they be sure that the nice guy type is not a way for them to purchase sex? Or that these females will not harvest superior genes while they pretend at home that they are good wives and good spouses? In the 50s, 10% of babies born were found to be born to men not of the father in the family. This is because women stray, because it's in their genetic code to stray. It's in genetic code to stray and sample genes. That's what they've evolved to be. Do not men stray as well? The only difference between women and men in this area is the period of commitment involved. For men, it only goes as far as the ejaculation, and then they are ready and willing to find another female to seed. For females, because of their sexual role and the weaning period and the risks involved, the period might be a little longer. Let's say 7 years, or the 7-year itch, as it is called, which is coincidentally the length of time a human infant requires to reach an age where it is more, or relatively so, autonomous and self-sufficient. Then these women, are looking around again. Even the ones that are married in happy, quote-unquote, relationships. Monogamy and romanticism is supported by monogamy and the romanticism it is supported by as part of the modernistic mythology. You can hear the disappointment in the voices of the men children who find female behavior as nature evolved it to be despicable, unfair, troubling, hurtful. Let's be honest. As things stand, sexual relationships are reverting back to a more primal stage. Promiscuity is part of our species' makeup. And if things go on shattering the social and cultural bonds that kept it all together, then a handful of men will be fucking most females, while the majority of men will be left on the outside looking in. This is already happening. But this happens in all species using heterosexuality as a method of reproduction. Look at the wolves, look at lions, look at chimpanzees, look at gorillas. Monogamy is an exception to the rule when it comes to mammals. The only reason families were viable up until now was because the social structures and the myths it was based upon, what women call paternalism, were still powerful enough to control the hearts and minds of the masses. Monogamy that made families possible was not only an economic necessity, but was also a method of integrating males into the fold. It made males who would be kept on the periphery more productive, loyal investors in the system's well-being. To achieve this, women's and men's sexual natures have to be controlled, have to be curbed. Men and women have to be manipulated, subdued, using morality, peer pressure, threats and promises, which amounts to social pressure, and also using law. Otherwise, men become destabilizing free radicals, always challenging the status quo. The reason why this technology, let's call it, of monogamy is no longer necessary is an intricate matter, but a short synopsis is required here. 1. Technology has made masculine advantages obsolete, resulting in the need to cultivate feminine psychologies in men so as to make them productive and good consumers. 2. Centuries of social engineering has selected feminine traits and propagated them via female choice throughout the populace, making men more docile, tolerant, disciplined to authority. 3. Institutional power is still weeding out any rogue genetic mutations by using censorship and incarceration to seclude and quarantine any destabilizing masculine manifestations. Prisons are filled with those. 4. Entertainment, including porn and computer games and drugs and sports, are being used as venting mechanisms for any excess masculine energy. Prostitution takes care of the rest. 5. Peer pressure is weeding out any unwanted behavior. The one that displays traits considered unwanted, politically incorrect, also called ill, are denied access to higher positions of social status, thus preventing them from reproducing, passing on these traits. Those who exhibit the right attitude and moral fiber and ideals are promoted, and these are most often the most effete, if not the ones that can pretend emasculation the best. 6. Education. From an early age, indoctrination training called education is instilled in boys. The correct behavior is trained into them. This correct behavior is invariably that of femininity. Boys are taught to be girls in essence. 7. Stupidity, also called non-discrimination, is promoted as a social virtue. The more stupid and simple you are, the more you haven't read a book in your life, the more cool you are, all the more socially acceptable you become. Intelligence is only tolerated when it does not exceed the boundaries of social propriety, and only when it is completely focused upon one specialty. Thusly, you get idiot savants, geniuses in one field, who are totally inept in every other area. Let's call this the nerd factor. Nerds are in these days, by the way. In fact, stupidity is now considered cool because anything that stands out and stands apart is considered antisocial, and so it is deemed ill. The value here is that all must be included into the social fiber. To fully understand the philosophy all this bullshit is founded upon, one must explore the foundations of popular postmodern Western civilization. In brief, Pinker describes it in his book The Blank Slate, the modern denial of human nature, he calls it. The Holy Trinity is the Father, blank slate. This is John Locke's idea that all babies, mostly human ones, are born with equal potentials and with no ingrained natural proclivities or limits. This also relates to racial matters, but also to gender matters. The idea implies that nothing of the past matters, at least not when it comes to humans, because they seem to be exempt from natural selection rules. The son, the noble savage, a Rousseau idea where civilization is what breeds evil into otherwise benevolent savages. This idea implies that before civilization corrupted man, he lived in a perpetual state of bliss in the Garden of Eden, presumably. This is also related to Judeo-Christian ideologies. And then lastly, there's the idea of the Holy Ghost, the ghost in the machine. This idea proposes the absurdity that beneath appearances lies a more real reality, an immutable shared soul that pulls the strings. This idea implies that empiricism is an illusion, which agrees with the Eastern philosophies, and that the senses were somehow produced not to aid in survival, but to trick us and test our mettle, so to speak. In other words, by denying our senses, we gain access to a more real reality after death, according to Christianity, or we gain access to a future of utopia, according to the secular humanism doctrine. The relation of secular humanism and Judeo-Christianity becomes most obvious in the search for the beginning of existence. Here, the beginning, insinuating an end, by the way, is taken for granted and is assumed to be at the center of the Big Bang. Another scientific law, which is called the law of conservation of energy, evokes the Christian ideal of immortality. The idea of humanity as being one whole body with no division is also part of the postmodern prejudice directly linked to Judaism and Christian Islamic doctrine. But that's taking the subject a bit off track. Let's bring it back to simpler matters as they pertain to the simpletons who call themselves the wronged, the men fighting for justice, the superheroes of today. You can almost smell the slavishness of a Christian whimpering against life because it has proven to be too harsh for him to bear. This is the slavishness of Judeo-Christianity who beg for mercy, who beg for their rights, who just want the massa to respect them, proving that they are fully emasculated, no different than the females they complain about. I mean, being male is against the law, this is true, but begging the institution that makes it possible for mercy only accentuates the fact of the matter. These men children do not dare to pay the price, nor are they willing to look at themselves as being a part of the problem causing their distress, because this requires a level of integrity no female can muster. The liberal buffoon bitches about how disappointed he is in women's behavior when it was his own naivete that made him dismiss nature as being vicious and selfish. The modern liberal Western male thinks that education and freedom solves all of man's woes, and in so doing displays a childishness no primitive can never match.